Top 5 combine risers. These are my combine risers. These are people I think you need to check out, watch for the names, and I would say that none of these guys will be a first-round pick, which is what, look, you can get attention in the first round. You win games by what you do in every other round in the draft. The teams that are good are the ones that consistently, especially in the third, fourth, and fifth rounds, find not necessarily superstars. You're not always going to get, Tom Brady's in the sixth round. That doesn't happen. But guys who are contributors, if you drop a fifth rounder, in my opinion, who gets to their second contract, that's a damn good, with your team, that's a damn good pick.
Honestly, I think that you get any draft pick now that gets to the second contract, because that means you want them. Mm-hmm. Like Tony Pollard's a fourth-round pick.
Yeah.
Explosive as heck. I never realized how big he was. I always thought that he was like kind of not Devin A-Chain type, but he's gonna. That's
he's lean.
Yeah, like he's strong as hell though. He always gets that extra yard or two. All right, so here we go.
Number 5, cornerback from Maryland, Jakorian Bennett. Look, you're going to hear a lot also about Deonte Banks, the cornerback who's on the other side at Maryland. These two guys would have been good for any team in the country, in any league in the country. They were that good at corner for the Terps last year. But Jakorian Bennett, he can boogie. He can make big plays. There are a lot of things about this guy that I like, and I think you could probably see him go in the third or fourth round. So if you're a team that needs a cornerback and misses out on one of those early ones, really deep position, there's probably 15 guys that are all – long-term NFL starters at that position in this draft.
What's his height?
He's like 6'0". I mean, so he's...
By the way, anyone else, when you look at the helmet that Maryland wears, you feel like it's a paint fight?
Yeah, no, they're a little too busy on this uniform. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. It really is. When you know what it is, but when you look at it, sometimes it looks like one of those all-star postseason college all-star games where everybody has their stickers on a helmet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit busy, but they've had those for Under Armour.
A long time.
Unveiled those a long time ago. But Jakorian Bennett, great combine as you said. Maryland. If you're a defensive coach, or particularly was Brian Stewart, who was at Baylor, who had went to Maryland year before last. I mean, you got a lot to play off of as far as going in recruiting, especially if you're recruiting corners. You're like, hey man, look at our dudes right here. And then flashing in Indy. But, heard his name a lot over the weekend. Maryland, not a program that gets a ton of attention, all that often. But they're deserving of it right now. And, he's a guy that got a lot of attention the last few days.
I'll never forget driving to McLean Stadium a couple of years, it would have been 3 years ago, when Maryland was playing Texas. And I wasn't paying attention. Then I looked at my updated scores, and they were beating them. They ran. I couldn't believe that.
They gave Ohio State. Took them right to the end of that game.
Yeah.
But if you want to know about Maryland's cornerbacks, just look no further than Ohio State game where they blocked an extra. The block was Deonte Banks. The return was Jakorian Bennett. That's how much athleticism they have over there. Number 4, Zack Pickens, defensive tackle from South Carolina. This is a guy who is under 300 pounds, but he's really tall, really big, and maybe not as much draft buzz from the combine as, say, a Kalijah Cansey from Pitt, who's going to be a really good player in the NFL, is hearkening comparisons to the last Pitt defensive tackle we all know,
Aaron Donald,
because of how fast he is. And there's some other guys, Apuika, Mozzie Smith from Michigan that are going to get a lot. Brian Brzee from Clemson, defensive tackles that are all going to go before Zack Pickens. But if you're the Cowboys, you need some athleticism at the defensive front, or a team like that. Zack Pickens, late second, third, maybe even late third, where he could go. This is someone you can find, I think, a ton of value for, and had a really great combine, and people are starting to notice him as well.
I'm just fascinated by the 2 seasons, Zach.
I am too.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just wondering.
Names today have more consonants in them than ever before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe so. I mean, I think it's just people trying to find different ways to spell things.
Unique, yeah.
But, I'd love to know the story behind the 2 C's in Zach. But, I mean, here's a former 5-star recruit. Recruiting matters, right? And there will inevitably be somebody who tells you, how many 3-star guys got drafted but leave out the part of, well, there's also like 3 times as many 3-stars every single year that are graded. So like there's inevitably going to be a bunch of 3-star guys drafted because there's more of them than any other ranking that's out there combined, probably. Probably combined even. But great player. Like I said, it was a 5-star guy back in the day, and that's a fun program to keep tabs on, man. I'm interested to see where they go in this new SEC now. It's a little bit more of a crowded room, but they got a little mojo, and obviously that East right now, Georgia's the top dog, and then Napier's trying to find his tracks, but now here comes Tennessee again, getting back to their glory years. So it'll be interesting to see. Not that they'll have divisions in the future, but interesting to see where they kind of fall in line with Shane Beamer. But I like what they've got building right now.
I like how they ended. By the way, Zach Pickens, you didn't know this. His birthday today.
Oh, well, happy birthday to Zach Pickens. Another Zach, a tight end from Old Dominion, Zack Kuntz. He 6'8", kind of an even taller version of Mike Gesicki. Didn't really show as much at Old Dominion as an inline blocker, but at 6'8" and 266 or whatever he is, somebody's going to teach him how to do that. But if you're looking, this is a deep tight end draft. He's one of those ones who might fall, somewhere in the middle of that, but he had a great week at the Combine. Will Mallory from Miami is another guy. I debated on which one of those two to put in here. I could have slashed it. Will Mallory from Miami played in a bad offense, but is super athletic. So, back in the day when Miami was just chalking up tight ends like Jeremy Shockey and guys like that, Will Mallory would have fit those Miami tight ends. Zack Kuntz is another guy, Old Dominion, so smaller school, but on the rise, and got all the physical traits. So we'll see the transition into the NFL, but a name to keep your eye on in the middle rounds.
Yeah, they had a big splash win over Virginia Tech to start last year. It just turns out Virginia Tech was just kind of so-so, but still has a great win for that program. I love their school colors. I think they got really sharp threads. But, yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a time to be a tight end in the National Football League, that's for sure. And obviously, colleges are scouring the fields of play for the next great tight end, and as many tight ends as they get their hands on. That's a position that's definitely at a premium, and the NFL is obviously thriving. That's a guy to definitely keep an eye on.
You know what?
Don't know much. I didn't see a ton of him, but I saw a little bit of Old Dominion. But
are there colors? What are the colors of Coastal Carolina?
Not even close to those.
No. Okay.
Yeah, no.
That almost looks like the old San Diego
That's
Chargers.
more North Carolina than it is anything Coastal Carolina.
Women's basketball at Old Dominion used to be a big deal.
Yeah, sure. We're not talking about that right now.
No, I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah, I know.
Nancy Lieberman.
Yeah. Every time you mention that, we lose 10 viewers. Number 2, Ricky Stromberg from Arkansas, a center. Probably can play a little guard as well. Really kind of a mauler there in the middle. And there's some good. Center is a position that's kind of random in the draft because, we had Mark Evans from Arkansas Pine Bluff on the other day. He's a guy who played tackle and guard who they're going to move to center. So that's kind of usually what happens with the center. They kind of find a guy and they move him there. Ricky Stromberg, a legit center in the kind of Travis Frederick mold of you're a center. That's what you are. There's a couple of guys like him. Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin. I think he's going to be right up there with him.
51's a center or middle linebacker, right?
God, what's his name? John Michael Schmitz, I want to say. And I don't know if I'm getting that right, but from Minnesota. But there's 3 guys, and I think he's kind of raised his level from people thinking he's maybe going to be a 6th-round pick to now seeing he might be a 3rd-round pick. He's pretty darn good, and tested out really well, which really helps.
Good for centers.
Yeah.
Good for them to get some shine.
There you go. Yeah, I wanted to throw that in there because I could have put in 11 more tight ends and DBs. And number 1, a guy that Big 12 fans are well aware of, Bryce Ford-Wheaton from West Virginia. If you saw him play in the league this year, you saw that he was one of the very few consistent bright spots from that West Virginia offense, which would get pretty moribund at times, in spite of, kind of the up and down quarterback situation. I will tell you, I think the floor for him is Cedric Wilson of the that was now with the Dolphins and was with the Cowboys, because he played a lot on special teams. He can do a lot. He's fast. He's big. Really, really smart player. Seems like he'll go, and do anything the team needs. I think if you're a team that needs a wide receiver, he's like 6'3". He ran really well. He catches really well. He's really good with contested catches. I think the film shows out for him. And again, he plays special teams, so he can contribute as a non-first-round wide receiver. I think he's one of the better ones. Soki, you and I talked about it at the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
we really liked.
I forgot what game it was.
That Pitt game, he was kind of he dominated against Pitt.
I'm just going to Google him. I don't know his
Y'all are
height.
gonna be You're going to be shocked when you see his stats and how unimpressive they are from last year. But that just speaks to West Virginia's year really overall. And I think that's something that they'll look back on when Neil Brown and be like, yeah, that was a missed opportunity. We should have performed a bit better with guys like Bryce Ford-Wheaton on our roster.
Yeah. And 4.38, 6'4", 221. For some reason, when I watched him earlier this year, and I'm not trying to compare it to his athleticism, but for a second, he reminded me of like a Des Bryant body. But obviously, I'm not trying to compare him to his skill set. But what were his stats, Craig?
He had it was like 638 yards receiving. It wasn't anything glorious, but
let's see, one 100-yard game the entire year. For a receiver, you don't need to necessarily have those week in and week out, but I do think that's a little bit of a measuring stick on sort of where you can start as far as impact. His impact was wide ranging, as Paul said, but I was just more getting at there wasn't like a big game that you can really point to outside of like one, and it was one they lost in overtime, and that was his 100-yard game. I forget who that was now at this point, but yeah, he was consistent. He just didn't have like a bunch of in-your-face huge performances. But if you watch West Virginia, then it was very clear that he was one of their better players. I think that's more than fair to say.
Yeah. Right. I think he's, and probably what's keeping him down in the middle of the draft is the fact that, the tape's not there, but I don't much blame that on Bryce Ford-Wheaton as on West Virginia. Yeah.
All right, 22 yards, 12 yards, 36 yards, 38 yards, 51 yards, 53, 51. Oh, he had a 93-yard game against Texas on 8 catches, 23 yards, 47 yards, 11 for 152 and 2 scores and an overtime loss to KU. And then closed the year, or the very beginning of the year. And then in week 1, prior to that, had 9 for 97 and 2 yards. I want to say, did he get hurt? Was he a little bit banged up? Because he had 2 big games to start off with, and then it just kind of petered out after that. But I don't remember if he was ever dinged or not. I mean, he played the rest of the way, so it wasn't anything too serious. But, yeah, he just, outside of those first 2, didn't have like a bunch of, massive games. But then again, who did for West Virginia? Yeah. There was a struggle on offense all year long for them, so that's not necessarily on him, so to speak.
All right, Garrett Ross, Emery Winter, Jack McKenzie earlier today.